I knew something was wrong when I walked into the quarterly review meeting, and every set of eyes in that room looked anywhere but at me. Coffee cups suddenly became fascinating. Laptops demanded immediate attention. Even Patricia from accounting, who usually greeted everyone with that overly cheerful good morning, just stared at her notepad like it held the secrets of the universe. My badge beeped green when I swiped into the building that morning, same as it had for 9 years. Same sound, same little flash of confirmation, but something in the air felt different, thicker, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the pressure drops and your ears start ringing. I'm Jordan Westbrook, and for nearly a decade, I was the Director of Systems Integration at Apex Industrial Solutions. We manufactured precision components for aerospace, medical devices, and defense contractors. The kind of work where a single misplaced decimal point could ground an aircraft or kill someone on an operating table. My job was to make sure that never happened. I managed the quality assurance protocols, the supplier verification systems, and every single certification that kept our products from being expensive paperweights. Most people thought I just pushed paper and ran software checks. They called me the gatekeeper behind my back. I knew because Trevor from production once sent me a message meant for someone else that said, "Can the gatekeeper approve this already? We've got quotas." I fixed his documentation errors and never mentioned it. That's how it always went. They rolled their eyes at my processes until those same processes saved their contracts. Then suddenly it was just good fortune or team effort. Let me pause for just a second here. If you're listening to this, there's a 91% chance you haven't subscribed yet. I know, we're all busy. But these stories, the corporate chaos, the perfectly executed takedowns, the HR disasters that make your own job look like paradise. They take real work to put together. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like. It keeps the team fueled and plotting the next glorious implosion. You know you want to. Anyway, back to the meeting. Last Tuesday, I received a notification from our primary certification body. Email and physical mail. Double delivery is never a good sign. Inside was a renewal notice for our AS9100 Aerospace Quality Management Certification. Without it, we couldn't ship a single component to Boeing, Lockheed, or any of the dozen other clients who comprised 80% of our revenue. The certification required a designated quality representative to sign off. That representative was me. Not the VP, not the COO, me. 6 years ago, after our third failed audit in 18 months, I personally rebuilt our entire quality infrastructure from the ground up. I took weekend calls from auditors. I drove 4 hours in a blizzard to hand-deliver corrective action reports. I turned our compliance rating from borderline catastrophic to exemplary. The certification board trusted me. They required my personal signature on every major filing. I slid that renewal form into my desk drawer, next to a protein bar and a thank you card from a supplier I'd helped navigate a material traceability crisis. The meeting was Monday. The form was due Friday. Plenty of time. At the Monday leadership sync, I brought it up casually. Heads up, everyone, AS9100 renewals on my desk, due Friday. I'll need to coordinate with the audit team this week, but we're in good shape. I was already being talked over. Brandon, the new VP of Operations, was mid-presentation about his efficiency transformation initiative. Mostly PowerPoint slides filled with synergy and optimization and other words that sound important but mean nothing. My name wasn't on any of his charts. "Jordan, not really the time for administrative updates," he said, flashing that practice smile that never reached his eyes. "We'll touch base later." I should have pushed harder. Should have made them listen, but I'd spent 9 years being the person who kept the engine running while everyone else revved it and took credit for the speed. So I just nodded and sat back, watched the meeting continue without me. But I made a mental note. My access badge felt heavier that afternoon, not physically, spiritually, like a storm cloud forming just out of sight. When I got back to my office, my assistant knocked on the door frame. "Jordan, you got a call from the certification board. They want to confirm you're still the designated rep on file. Said it was time sensitive." I knew exactly what that meant. It meant the only person standing between this company and a complete operational shutdown was about to become invisible. And when that happened, Nobody would see it coming until it was far too late. The first time I met Brandon, he called me Jason. I corrected him. He laughed and said, "Close enough, right?" By the third time, I stopped bothering. Let him drown in his own arrogance. Brandon came from the tech startup world, even though we built physical products that people's lives depended on. He wore expensive sneakers with tailored suits, carried around an iPad like it was a sacred text, talked about disruption and agile methodologies and moving fast and breaking things. That last one should have been the warning. You don't get to break things when you're building components for fighter jets. His first all-hands email had a GIF of a rocket launching. That really should have told us everything. Legacy processes are where innovation goes to die, he announced to the entire leadership team on his second week. The room full of directors and senior managers, most with 15 to 25 years of institutional knowledge, just stared at him. I don't think he even noticed. His eyes scanned for potential threats, people who might challenge his vision. When they landed on me, something clicked, not curiosity, not respect. Just that oily little assessment that said, "You're an obstacle." He started small. Removed me from the weekly production call. Said it was being streamlined for efficiency. Then, he rerouted supplier audits to procurement. The procurement team didn't know the difference between a certificate of conformance and a lunch menu. When I flagged a concern about an upcoming FAA spot inspection, he waved it off. "Jordan, if it's actually critical, I'm sure someone will escalate it." Like federal aviation regulations were optional suggestions. I started a new folder that afternoon. Digital and physical, every email, every ignored warning, every deadline I flagged that he dismissed. If Brandon wanted to play corporate Hunger Games with quality certifications and federal compliance, I was going to make absolutely certain I wasn't holding the weapon when everything detonated. 3 days later, I tried to stop a materials purchase that would have violated our conflict minerals disclosure requirements. Simple issue. Preventable mistake. I brought it to him quietly. "Brandon, if we process this tungsten shipment without the supplier declaration, we're going to trigger a compliance review that could suspend our—" "Jordan," he interrupted, not looking up from his tablet. "I don't need every minor procurement flagged like it's a 5-alarm fire." It wasn't minor. It was a potential $200,000 fine and a 6-month investigation. But sure, ignore the guy with the clipboard. The next morning I got a call from the certification board. The auditor's voice always sounded like gravel in a blender. "Hey Jordan, just wanted to give you a heads up. Your quality rep designation is up for renewal next week." My stomach did something complicated. "Next week? Already?" "Yep, Friday. Courtesy call. You're still planning to sign, right? Well, you're listed as the sole designated representative." I paused. "Yeah, unless something changes on my end," he chuckled. "Well, just remember, if that designation lapses, you can't ship product. Not legally. Certification gets suspended immediately." Oh, I remembered. I'd written half the procedures myself. I thanked him and hung up. My fingers were already opening that insurance folder. Timestamps, email chains, a spreadsheet showing every certification, every filing, every regulatory requirement that hinged on my personal designation. I even printed a copy, put it in a manila envelope, and locked it in my car's glove box, just in case Brandon decided to go scorched earth. That afternoon, during a production planning meeting, Brandon openly mocked what he called the paranoid quality bureaucracy that bogs down our velocity. I didn't speak. I just watched our legal counsel shift uncomfortably when Brandon proudly declared, "We're cutting the red tape and modernizing compliance." Cut me, Brandon. Go right ahead. Because the second my designation expires without renewal, our AS9100 certification vanishes, our ISO certifications follow, our customer approvals evaporate. And when that happens, I hope your little rocket ship GIF can manufacture 12 million worth of aerospace components. I made a quiet decision that day. I wouldn't warn him again. I wouldn't defend my position. I'd simply let the system do exactly what it was designed to do, collapse without the person who held it together. The Monday morning leadership meeting had an atmosphere you could cut with a dull knife, fake enthusiasm plastered over barely concealed dread, the kind of energy that comes right before someone gets fired or a department gets eliminated. The calendar invite had come late Sunday night from Brandon's assistant. Subject line: Strategic Realignment Discussion, Mandatory. Strategic realignment, corporate speak for we're about to ruin someone's life. I wore gray, not as a statement, just instinct. Brandon made everyone wait in the conference room for 19 minutes. Power move, I guess. Finally strolled in carrying his iPad and an overpriced coffee, like he was about to deliver a TED Talk on destroying a perfectly functional operation. His expensive shoes clicked on the tile as he paced. That smug expression was already forming at the corners of his mouth. "Good morning, team," he began, voice bright like a game show host. "We're entering a new chapter of operational excellence and fiscal responsibility." Nobody responded. Even Rick from finance, who usually laughed at everything like he was being paid by the chuckle, sat silent. Brandon tapped his iPad. A slide appeared on the monitor behind him. Operational optimization, phase 1. Bullet points, graphs, a stock photo of diverse people in hard hats looking inspirational. Then, casually, like he was reading the lunch menu, effective immediately. Jordan Westbrook's position is being eliminated as part of our cost reduction and efficiency initiative. Someone gasped. I think it was Patricia, but I didn't move, didn't flinch. I'd sat across from federal inspectors who carried firearms and spoke in regulation codes. Brandon was just noise wrapped in overpriced fabric. He kept talking, voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. We appreciate Jordan's contributions over the years. Change is necessary for growth. I stood slowly, buttoned my jacket. My hands were completely steady. I'd been in rooms with FAA auditors who could shut down entire production lines with a single observation. Brandon was nothing. The room froze. Everyone looked like a photograph. Even our legal director looked confused. Clearly nobody had briefed him on this brilliant plan. I didn't argue, didn't ask about severance or demand explanations, didn't mention the 247 active certifications that now had zero qualified oversight. I just picked up my notebook, my phone, and walked out without looking back. People stood awkwardly in the hallway as I passed. They knew something had happened. I didn't stop to explain. Let the rumors do the heavy lifting. My assistant was standing near my office door, eyes wide with shock. "Jordan, what the hell just happened?" I gave him a small smile. "Just Monday, Derek. Just Monday." I opened my desk drawer, pulled out a thin folder labeled Emergency Protocols, and slid it into my bag. Inside were copies of every ignored warning, every email Brandon had dismissed, my original designation letter, and the pending certification renewal with a sticky note that read, "Do not submit without proper authorization." My badge still worked. Another oversight on their part. In the elevator, alone, I finally let myself move. Pulled out my phone and found one contact, the auditor from the certification board. No explanation, just a simple text. "Effective immediately, I'm no longer employed at Apex Industrial Solutions. You'll want to flag the AS 9100 renewal. No active designated representative on file." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Understood. Thanks for the notification." The elevator doors opened to the lobby. I walked out into the cold, morning air. Through the windows, I could see the production floor, machines running, people working, components moving down assembly lines like oblivious soldiers marching toward a battle they didn't know they'd already lost. Brandon thought he'd won, thought he'd trimmed the fat and increased efficiency, but he'd just removed the foundation, and by the time he realized what he'd done, the silence I left behind would be deafening. Brandon was glowing. Not in a good way. The kind of glow that comes from someone too ignorant to realize they're standing in a minefield. The morning after my strategic realignment, he strutted into the operations huddle with 2 expensive coffees. One for himself, one for Jennifer, our legal director, who looked about as thrilled as someone being handed a subpoena. Brandon was already bragging to anyone within earshot that cutting bureaucratic overhead is already improving team morale. Rick from finance gave a weak laugh. Everyone else studied the Detached floor like archaeologists examining ancient ruins. Nobody had realized what was missing yet. Here's the thing about regulatory infrastructure. When it breaks, it doesn't explode. Not immediately. There's no alarm, no flashing lights, just a slow, creeping silence that turns catastrophic overnight. It's boring until it's absolutely devastating. That silence ended at 9:03 a.m. sharp. The first call came from Building C production supervisor. Voice panicked. All shipments are frozen. System says certification verification failed. I can't release any product. Jennifer looked confused. She refreshed the quality management dashboard. Nothing. Then Building A called, then Building D. Within 8 minutes, all 4 of our production facilities were completely locked down. Shipping doors wouldn't open. Digital approval systems rejected every request. Customer portals showed all orders as pending compliance review. Logistics coordinators were fielding calls from freight companies threatening breach of contract penalties. At 9:11 a.m., an email landed in every executive inbox from the American Aerospace Quality Group. The subject line, immediate action required, Apex Industrial Solutions. The body was simple and direct. Due to expiration of AS9100 certification and absence of an active designated quality representative on file, Apex Industrial Solutions manufacturing authorization is hereby suspended effective immediately under Section 7.3 of Aerospace Quality Standards. No product shipment is authorized pending certification reinstatement and representative designation. Brandon read it twice. His lips moved both times like a child sounding out difficult words. Then he shouted, "What the hell is a designated quality representative?" Jennifer looked like she might be sick. "It's Jordan," she whispered. "What do you mean it's Jordan?" "He was the DQR, only he could file the AS9100 renewal. Nobody else is authorized. It's tied to his personal certification and security. Credentials. He mentioned it last week. In the meeting, before you..." Brandon's face went pale. Meanwhile, I was finishing breakfast at a cafe 2 towns over. Sunlight streaming through the windows, fresh coffee. The server had just asked if I wanted another pastry. I did. My phone buzzed, twice, 3 times. Calls from numbers I didn't recognize, one from HR, one from a number that might have been Brandon's direct line. I put the phone face down on the table. Didn't even glance at it. Back at headquarters, chaos was accelerating. Brandon was yelling into conference calls. Legal was frantically searching internal documents, trying to understand how a single unsigned form could freeze a 12 million daily operation. Someone finally found the compliance roadmap I'd built. They opened it and saw highlighted in red a note from 3 weeks prior. AS9100 renewal due 11/18. Final authorization must be submitted by DQR Jordan Westbrook. No substitution permitted under current certification structure. Jennifer stood, walked to her office, and quietly closed the door. By 10:45 a.m., client calls were flooding in. Boeing, Northrop, Lockheed, medical device manufacturers, all asking why their shipments were frozen. If product didn't ship within 48 hours, penalty clauses would trigger. Some contracts had liquidated damages in the 6 figures. Brandon was sweating through his expensive shirt now, still trying to navigate the certification board's automated phone system. The auditor, of course, wasn't answering. He didn't need to. The system was automated. No DQR equals no certification equals no shipment authorization. And me? I ordered another coffee. Hadn't felt this calm in years. I didn't sabotage anything. I just let the paperwork do what it always threatened to do. Bury the people who never respected it. By noon, the CEO had flown in from Seattle. If you've never seen a man in $800 Italian shoes look like he might cry in a room full of senior managers. You've never watched a multi-million-dollar manufacturing operation grind to a halt because someone didn't respect the person who kept everything legal. His name was Victor. Tailored suit. Too much cologne. Voice like a cement mixer full of regret. He usually only appeared for earnings calls and investor presentations. But when the assembly lines stop moving and the contracts stop paying, Victor shows up. He walked straight into the emergency response room where legal, operations, finance, and production were pretending to problem solve, but mostly panicking in slow motion. Brandon stood when Victor entered. First mistake. Why are all 4 facilities locked down? Victor's voice could have stripped paint. Brandon opened his mouth, closed it. His throat worked like he was trying to swallow something too large. Jennifer from legal tried diplomacy. The issue stems from a lapsed AS9100 certification renewal. The designated quality representative lapsed by whom? Victor's eyes were cold. She cleared her throat. Jordan Westbrook was our DQR. The certification board requires the renewal to be submitted through his personal credentials and physical signature. He was the only person authorized under the 2021 revised standards. Where is he? He's not here, sir, Jennifer said slowly. He was terminated yesterday during the restructuring. The air changed, not panic anymore. Rage, focused, calculated rage. Victor turned to Brandon. You fired the only person who could legally authorize our production? Brandon tried to smile. It died on his face. Look, I was under the impression that legal had cross-trained other staff. Did you fire him? Victor's voice dropped to something dangerous. The decision was made to streamline redundant. Did you fire him? Yes. Victor sat down hard, pinched the bridge of his nose, looked at HR. Tell me we have a contingency. Vanessa from HR shuffled through papers like they might spontaneously generate better news. His offboarding checklist. It wasn't completed. We don't have credential transfers. His system access is still active. His certifications are still tied to his personal... He still has access, Victor snapped. Technically, yes, but his DQR designation is automatically revoked upon employment termination, and the replacement process... How long? Jennifer answered. 6 to 10 weeks. The certification board won't authorize a new representative without vetting. That includes a minimum 90-day employment history in a quality management role at our facility. So we're completely locked out. That's correct. Victor stood, walked to the window overlooking the production floor, where hundreds of thousands of dollars in machinery sat silent and useless, where workers stood around in clusters, confused and idle, where contracts bled money by the hour. He turned around. Who authorized this restructuring? Every eye in the room landed on Brandon. You'll be making the statement to the board, Victor said quietly. Personally. Down the hall, my old team had gathered like survivors after a disaster. Derek, my former assistant, was the first to say what everyone was thinking. Why didn't anyone ask Jordan before cutting him? He looked around the room. Why didn't we say something? Nobody had a good answer, because they had all known. Known I was the one fixing errors at midnight. Known I took the fall when inspectors showed up unannounced. Known I carried the entire compliance infrastructure on my back. Now they sat in the crater, smoke rising, staring at the wreckage of their own silence. My inbox, still active because HR hadn't finished offboarding, started lighting up. Subject lines like, Jordan, we need to talk, and please tell me you kept the backup files, and I'm so sorry we didn't know. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The certifications didn't care about apologies. Neither did I. It started with a text message at 7:52 a.m. Wednesday. Jordan, can we talk? Off the record, Brandon. The man had gone from parading around quoting business gurus to texting like a teenager caught cheating on a test. I stared at the message while drinking my coffee and deleting a LinkedIn recruiter's generic pitch. Exciting leadership opportunities in your area. No thanks. I already had one developing nicely. I didn't respond, not to Brandon, not to the junior legal associate who sent a desperate email begging for clarification on your certification renewal protocols. Not to the HR coordinator who left a voicemail that somehow sounded both apologetic and like a hostage video. They'd all made their choices. Now they could live with the consequences. I did open my insurance folder one more time. Digital and physical copies. Cross-referenced everything just to be thorough, not paranoia, due diligence. The other filings were right where I'd left them. Each one flagged with dates, contact information, and a final note. DQR signature required J. Westbrook. Do not submit without authorization. ITAR compliance for defense contracts. ISO 13485 for medical device manufacturing. Conflict minerals disclosure for the SEC. Environmental impact assessment for the state. Supplier audit certifications for 3 major clients. Federal export control documentation. Every single one had a ticking clock. And now, those timers were loud enough for even the board to hear. By Thursday morning, clients weren't just calling, they were sending legal notices. Boeing sent a formal letter. Suspension of purchase orders pending resolution of certification compliance. Northrop escalated to their legal department. Indemnification protections at risk due to supplier non-compliance. Even 2 medical device companies began emergency supplier audits, which is corporate speak, for we think you're lying and we're covering our liability. Brandon tried to spin it on the internal Slack channel. Temporary administrative delay. We're working with regulatory partners to expedite resolution. Temporary? Right? Like the Titanic had a temporary buoyancy issue. One of my former colleagues, Mitchell from Quality Control, someone I actually respected, called me privately. "Jordan, it's complete chaos. It's like they kicked out the air supply and now they're suffocating." He paused. "You really walked away with the oxygen tank, didn't you?" I didn't gloat, didn't laugh, just asked, "You updated your resume yet?" "Already sent out 3 applications," he muttered. I updated mine that afternoon, not because I was desperate, not because I was worried, but because sometimes it's good to see your value laid out in black and white. 9 years, 0 compliance violations, designated quality representative for 4 overlapping certification bodies, built quality management system from ground up, managed successful audits from FAA, FDA, and Department of Defense, reduced non-conformance incidents by 67%, certified under 2019 and 2021 DQR protocols. That last one was gold. Only 38 people in the state held both certifications simultaneously. My phone buzzed again. Another recruiter. I ignored it. I already had plans forming. Quiet conversations, 2 lunch invitations, 1 coffee meeting with a competitor who'd definitely been waiting for Apex to implode. No decisions yet. I liked watching my options multiply while Brandon's empire crumbled. Calm detachment. That's what I felt. Like watching a building collapse from across the street. You warned them about the foundation. You showed them the cracks. They ignored you, insulted you, then acted shocked when gravity still worked. I was reading a book when the doorbell rang. Not a package. Flowers. Large, slightly awkward arrangement. Roses and orchids assembled by someone who meant well, but didn't really understand floral design. The card was handwritten in neat print. You were the foundation. I'm sorry we let him break you. Derek. I sat with that for a moment, not the apology. Those were arriving like spam now. But the word foundation. They'd all thought I was background noise, a process guy, the compliance person with binders and polite reminders, but they forgot something crucial. Foundations hold up everything above them. Remove the foundation without checking what you're supporting, and the entire structure comes down. That same morning, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Almost let it go to voicemail, but the area code caught my attention. Not local, not Apex. Jordan Westbrook speaking. Mr. Westbrook, this is Catherine Reynolds, VP of Operations at Titanium Dynamics. We met briefly at the Aerospace Quality Summit 2 years ago. I remembered her. Sharp questions, sharper insights. Asked me to explain the regulatory gap in the 2020 environmental standards when most of the room couldn't even identify it. She didn't waste time. I'll be direct. We're expanding into 3 new sectors, and I need someone to overhaul our entire quality infrastructure. I've been watching the Apex situation. It's obvious that your absence created the collapse. I appreciate that, I said, non-committal. We don't want another Jordan. We want you. Contract to hire initially. Full autonomy. Complete authority over quality systems. No VP second-guessing your decisions. You design it, implement it, and run it. I let silence do the work. I didn't need to jump, not yet. The satisfaction of having options was its own reward, but Titanium Dynamics was serious. Larger than Apex. Better leadership, or at least leadership that learned from other people's mistakes. And they'd seen what happened when a company failed to understand the value of quiet competence and well-timed restraint. I'd need full sign-off authority on all regulatory filings, I said. Direct access to your legal team, not filtered through operations. Done. No performance reviews for the first year. I build my own team, set my own priorities and timelines. Agreed. I want a seat at Executive strategy meetings, not a token presence, real input. You'll chair the compliance committee. I took a breath. The flowers on my table were already starting to fade. Too much, too fast. I'll think about it. That night, I walked past my home office and saw the binder on the shelf. Gold tabs, color-coded sections, the original compliance framework I'd built for Apex Industrial. 9 years of refinement, 9 years of protecting people who didn't know they were standing at the edge of a cliff. Now they were whispering my name in emergency meetings. Jordan warned us about this. Jordan had a system. Jordan would have caught this. People who'd never returned my emails were suddenly invoking my name like scripture. And still, I didn't respond. Let them sit in their crisis meetings printing my old workflows like sacred texts. Let them chase their own shadows, trying to recreate something they never bothered to understand while I was there. I didn't need revenge, didn't need to gloat. All I needed was for the truth to settle like snow over their entire operation. I was the foundation. Now I was gone. But I was already building something new, sharper, cleaner, mine. And this time, nobody would mistake me for background noise. The report arrived on Friday. Wasn't public yet, but it hit every executive inbox at Apex Industrial like a mortar shell through a window. Compliance review findings, 36-month retrospective analysis from the Aerospace Quality Certification Board. 17 pages. Dense, brutal. It outlined a pattern, late submissions, incomplete documentation, temporary waivers granted with unusual frequency, inconsistencies in materials traceability, quality audit findings that should have been major violations but somehow got downgraded, all between January of the previous year and November of the current year. But here's what made it devastating. Each flagged incident had a footnote. Issue resolved via direct intervention by DQR-J Westbrook. Violation waived pending corrective action coordinated by DQR-J Westbrook. Documentation completed following personal consultation with DQR-J Westbrook. Over and over and over. My name, my emails, my phone calls at 2 a.m. The time I drove 7 hours to hand-deliver corrected paperwork because the digital system had crashed. The time I convinced an auditor that our testing equipment calibration delay was due to a supplier bankruptcy, not negligence. I wasn't a cog in their machine. I was the machine. And now that I wasn't there to buffer every near miss, those same incidents were being re-examined. Not with malice, just with protocol. And protocol doesn't care about quarterly earnings or executive bonuses. Meanwhile, Brandon was getting systematically dismantled in the boardroom. The meeting was supposedly confidential, but I had sources everywhere. Mitchell from Quality Control had been standing outside the glass conference room pretending to review a tablet. He texted me 4 words after the first hour. They're destroying him. The board chair opened by placing a printed copy of the suspension notice in the center of the table. This alone cost us $31.7 million in halted production, contract penalties, and client suspensions, she began. But that's just the immediate damage. What I want to understand is how this happened. Brandon started carefully. There were some communication gaps regarding the certification timeline. You fired the only person with regulatory authority, someone cut in, a board member I didn't recognize. I made a decision to eliminate redundant overhead. She was not redundant, Jennifer from legal said, voice sharp. Jordan documented everything. We found 8 flagged renewals, all marked with deadlines, procedures, and direct board contacts. He sent a comprehensive risk assessment 6 weeks before you terminated him. You ignored it. Brandon went pale. There was no formal escalation that indicated, because you were. The escalation point, Jennifer was standing now. He brought concerns directly to you in 3 separate meetings. We have the calendar invites, the emails, the documentation. Silence. The kind that feels like it's pulling oxygen out of the room. Someone from finance asked if the DQR designation could be transferred retroactively. Jennifer shook her head. Not without board approval, and not without the full qualification process. We're looking at minimum 10 weeks, even with emergency prioritization. Another director mentioned shareholder liability concerns. The chair asked about damage mitigation. Not unless we can demonstrate the certification lapse was due to administrative error, not gross negligence, legal replied, which, given Jordan's paper trail, is going to be extremely difficult to argue. The bleeding had started. Clients were suspending contracts daily. The insurance provider requested a full operational audit. PR was working overtime trying to manage the perception crisis. And me? I was planting herbs, fresh basil in ceramic pots, rosemary by the window, watching morning light hit my kitchen counter while I drank coffee from a mug a former intern had given me. It said, "Quality is not an act. It is a habit." I didn't laugh, just smiled and opened my notebook. At the top of the page, Titanium Dynamics Proposed Quality Framework. My new foundation was already taking shape. Clear lines, defined roles, zero tolerance for arrogance disguised as innovation. Meanwhile, Apex was hemorrhaging talent. Half my old team had already messaged me. "Any room where you're going? I'll follow you anywhere. Just say the word." I hadn't answered yet. Let them bleed a little longer. Let them understand what it costs to treat your foundation like furniture. You remove the wrong support beam, and everything above it collapses. They removed me. Victor was on hour 4 of what legal euphemistically called regulatory remediation dialogue. Everyone else would call it begging. The CEO of Apex Industrial Solutions, the man who'd once toasted record profits with champagne that cost more than most people's car payments, was now hunched over a laptop, tie loosened, blinking at a screen like a student waiting for exam results. Across the video call sat 3 officials from the certification board, professional suits, neutral expressions, but the woman in the center, Dr. Angela Foster, deputy director, spoke with the calm that only comes from holding absolute leverage. "We've reviewed your submitted request for expedited reinstatement," she said. "Unfortunately, it's incomplete." Victor tried to keep his voice level. "We've provided every supporting document, all operational records, supplier audits, inspection histories." "The issue," she interrupted gently, "isn't the documentation, it's the authorization. You're missing a registered designated quality representative." A pause. "Your former representative, Jordan Westbrook, was certified at the highest tier. He maintained an exemplary record." Victor's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted, like watching a man realize he's standing on ice that's already cracking. He leaned back slowly. The boardroom was silent. Nobody moved. On screen, Dr. Foster continued. "Until a new representative is certified, vetted, and formally designated under Section 7.3 protocols, your operating authorization remains suspended." Victor opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered so quietly that only those closest heard it. "Who exactly did we just fire?" Nobody answered. The PR team was already drafting resignation letters. The CFO had stopped pretending to check his phone. Brandon wasn't even in the room anymore. But I wasn't watching any of it. Didn't need to. I was walking into my new office. Not a cubicle, not a desk shoved in a corner near the break room. An actual office with windows overlooking the city. Fresh paint, new furniture, nameplate on the door. Jordan Westbrook, Vice President of Quality and Regulatory Affairs, Titanium Dynamics. I set my bag on the desk, ran my hand across the smooth surface, opened the leather portfolio I'd brought. Inside was my binder, the one with gold tabs and red flags and enough institutional knowledge to run circles around any compliance audit in the country. This time, I wasn't the seatbelt. I was steering the entire vehicle. No more invisible labor, no more silencing, no more "we'll circle back." My voice was the process now. As I booted up my new system, my inbox pinged. Subject line, "New DQR onboarding documentation from the Aerospace Quality Certification Board." They already knew. They'd been waiting for this. I smiled, just slightly. Not from rage, not from revenge, from justice. Quiet, efficient, bulletproof justice. Apex didn't collapse because I sabotaged them. They collapsed because I stopped shielding them from their own incompetence. The system worked exactly as designed. All I did was let it. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new office when Derek forwarded me an article. He'd left Apex 2 days after I did. Joined Titanium Dynamics as my quality systems coordinator. Smart kid. Knew when to abandon a sinking ship. The article was from a trade publication. Apex Industrial Solutions faces extended shutdown. Client exodus following compliance crisis. I skimmed it. The details were familiar. Production still frozen. Major clients had terminated contracts. Stock price down 43%. Board had initiated an internal investigation. Brandon had been placed on administrative leave, which is corporate code for "we're gathering evidence before we fire you legally." But the paragraph that caught my attention was near the end. Industry sources suggest the crisis could have been prevented. Former Director of Systems Integration Jordan Westbrook, who was terminated one day before the certification lapse, had reportedly flagged the issue multiple times. Westbrook, who held rare dual DQR certifications, has since joined competitor Titanium Dynamics in an executive role. Derek knocked on my doorframe. "You see it?" I did. "They're talking about you like you're some kind of legend now, the guy who warned them and they didn't listen." I closed the article. "I'm not a legend, Derek. I'm just someone who did their job correctly and got tired of being treated like furniture." He grinned. "Well, furniture doesn't usually cause $50 million in damages when you throw it out." $50 million? That's the latest estimate. Between lost contracts, penalties, legal fees, and the stock drop. Could go higher. I turned back to my computer, pulled up the quality framework I was building for Titanium Dynamics. Clean, comprehensive, foolproof. "Make sure that doesn't happen here," I said. "You're the VP. It won't." After Derek left, I allowed myself one small moment of satisfaction. Not because Apex was suffering, not because Brandon's career was probably over, not because Victor was likely explaining to very angry shareholders why the company had fired its most critical employee, but because the system had worked. For 9 years, I'd been told my job was administrative overhead, bureaucratic drag, unnecessary complexity. I'd been dismissed, talked over, and treated like I was slowing everyone down, until the moment I left and everything stopped. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply step aside and let people experience the consequences they've been protected from. My phone buzzed. Text from Catherine Reynolds, my new boss. "Board meeting went great. They're thrilled with your 90-day roadmap. Also, we just got approached by 2 of Apex's former clients. They want to talk about switching suppliers. Interested in sitting in on those meetings?" I texted back, "Absolutely." She sent a thumbs-up emoji. Then, "By the way, we're getting calls from quality professionals who heard you're here. 3 referrals just today asking if we're hiring. You're apparently the guy everyone wants to work for now." I sat back in my chair, looked out at the city skyline. Reputation. That's what 9 years of competence builds. Not the flashy kind. Not the kind from TED Talks or LinkedIn thought leadership posts. The quiet kind. The kind where people in your industry know that when you sign something, it's bulletproof. When you flag a risk, it's real. When you build a system, it works. Brandon had reputation too now, just not the kind that helps your career. I spent the rest of the afternoon in meetings, walked through the current quality infrastructure with the engineering team, reviewed supplier audit procedures with procurement, had a video call with our certification liaison to introduce myself and establish working protocols. Everything I'd wanted to do at Apex but couldn't because I was too busy putting out fires and being ignored. At 6 p.m., I packed up my bag. New office, new title, new company, but the same binder, same principles, same standards. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Jordan Westbrook." "Mr. Westbrook, this is Mitchell from Apex Quality Control." "Hey Mitchell, how are things?" A long pause. "Honestly, it's a disaster. We're still shut down. They brought in external consultants to try to speed up the DQR certification process, but the board is requiring extensive vetting. Could be another month, maybe 2. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Listen, I know this is asking a lot, but is there any chance Titanium Dynamics is hiring? I can't stay here anymore. The whole place is toxic now. Everyone's pointing fingers. Morale is completely destroyed." I unlocked my car, sat down. "Send me your resume. We're building a team. Can't make promises, but I'll take a look." Thank you. Seriously. Thank you. He paused. For what it's worth, Jordan, we should have backed you up. When Brandon started cutting you out, we should have said something. We all knew. You were holding everything together. I appreciate that, Mitchell. We thought it would work out somehow, that someone would step in, that it wasn't our fight. His voice cracked slightly. We were wrong, and I'm sorry. I watched the sun setting over the parking lot, orange light reflecting off windshields. You know what I learned? I said quietly. It's never not your fight. When you see something wrong happening, when you see someone being treated unfairly, when you see a disaster forming, staying silent is still a choice, and choices have consequences. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I'm learning that now. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a few more minutes, not angry, not bitter, just reflective. The truth is, I didn't destroy Apex. They destroyed themselves. I just stopped preventing it. For 9 years, I'd been the invisible safety net, catching every mistake, fixing every error, preventing every disaster. And nobody noticed, because that's what invisible things are. Invisible. Until they're gone. I started the car and drove home. Past the Apex headquarters, the parking lot was still half full. Lights on in the offices, people working late, probably still trying to solve a problem that had a very simple solution. Don't fire the person holding everything together, but that lesson had already cost them everything. 6 months later, Titanium Dynamics was thriving. We'd landed 3 major contracts, including 2 that had left Apex. Our quality rating was flawless. 0 violations, 0 delays, 0 drama. I'd built a team of 12. Mitchell had joined, so had 3 other former Apex employees who'd reached out. Derek was now my senior quality coordinator. We had systems, backups, cross-training, documentation, everything I'd tried to build at Apex but couldn't because I was too busy being the entire system by myself. Apex Industrial Solutions had eventually gotten their certifications reinstated, took them 4 months, cost them millions. Lost them half their client base, their stock never recovered. Victor had resigned, Brandon had been fired, and according to LinkedIn, was now a consultant, which usually means unemployed and desperate. They'd hired 3 people to do what I'd done alone. I was in my office reviewing a supplier audit when Catherine knocked on my door. Got a minute? Of course. She sat down, handed me a folder. Contract offer, official. The board wants to make your position permanent. VP of Quality and Regulatory Affairs, full executive compensation package, equity, the works. I opened it, read through the terms. It was generous, more than generous. There's one more thing, she said. We want to create a new director-level position under you, Director of Compliance Systems. We need someone to help scale what you've built. You'd have full authority to hire whoever you want. I looked up at her. You're serious about this? Jordan, in 6 months, you've transformed our entire operation. We're landing contracts we couldn't have touched before. Our reputation in the industry has never been better. You're not overhead. You're not administrative drag. You're the foundation of everything we're building. She leaned forward. We know what you're worth. We saw what happened when Apex didn't. I signed the offer that afternoon. That evening, I was at home when I got an email from Victor, Apex's former CEO. Subject, an apology long overdue. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. Jordan, I know this email is months too late and likely unwelcome. I've spent the last 6 months understanding exactly how badly I failed, not just as a CEO, but as a leader. You tried to warn us multiple times about the certifications, about the risks, about the consequences of marginalization and oversight. We didn't listen. I didn't listen. I let Brandon's confidence override your competence, and it cost us everything. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that you were right. About all of it. And I'm sorry we didn't see it until it was too late. I hope you're thriving wherever you landed. You deserve it. Victor. I read it twice, then closed it. No reply needed. Some apologies come too late to matter. But I saved it in a folder labeled Validation. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something better while watching the people who doubted you realize exactly what they lost. You're the real MVPs of the corporate battlefield. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, because these stories don't write themselves, and your support keeps the chaos coming. Until next time, remember, never underestimate the quiet ones. We're usually the ones holding everything together.